and today I am reviewing the new Broadway musical, The Heart of Rock and Roll, an original stage musical inspired by the songs of Huey Lewis and the News, with a book by Jonathan A. Abrams, story by Tyler Mitchell and Jonathan A. Abrams, choreographed by Lorin Latarro, and directed by Gordon Greenberg, running at the James Earl Jones Theater at 138 West 48th Street in New York City. I'm working for a living here, and you can help by making the power of your love for my channel show by becoming a patron over on my Patreon page. For as little as $1 a month, you can help meet expenses for this show, as well as my classic cinema podcast, Yesterday's Matinee. Thank you to my current patrons, especially my Neo and Hamilton tier patrons, and welcome to my new ones. What makes a Jukebox show good or great, or at the bare minimum, entertaining? I struggle with this question quite a bit. I'm generally not a fan of them. I find they tend to be forced, with the music shoehorned into plots, occasionally reworking lyrics in order for them to make any remote sense, or they end up being biographical musicals that tend to be more about audience gratification of seeing their favorite songs performed without any real context or advancement of plot. Even the really good ones, like Hell's Kitchen, tends to be derivative, even with the new songs written for that show specifically. The Heart of Rock and Roll also has a very derivative plot, but what's interesting is that in this case, Jonathan A. Abrams' book is very self-aware, which will make audiences either laugh out loud or roll their eyes, or maybe both at the same time if you're like me, who have seen so many plays, musicals, and movies that have similar stories. So not only will your affection toward Huey Lewis and the News' music play a major role in your enjoyment of The Heart of Rock and Roll, but also your willingness to digest the story that is being given to you. Lifted right out of a 1980s comedy, The Heart of Rock and Roll, which happens to be set in the 1980s, follows Bobby, played by Corey Cott, who works at a cardboard box manufacturer in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. His ambitions get the better of him when he makes an unauthorized business deal with a local company, costing the boss, Stone, played by John Dossett, tons of money. Consequently, he is fired. In an effort to save his career, Bobby travels to an annual packing and shipping conference in Chicago, where Stone and his daughter Cassandra, played by Mackenzie Kurtz, are attempting to save the company from failing. While helping Cassandra save the company with their HR rep Roz, played by Tamika Lawrence, Bobby is also approached by the members of the band he used to be a frontman for, as they urge him to return for a performance that could land them a contract. As I said, this is a pretty derivative plot that you've probably seen a dozen times in other stories, and you'll have a pretty good idea where the show is going to end by the 15-minute mark. The question is, will you enjoy the journey there? Because Abrams doesn't shy away from the self-aware, tongue-in-cheek quality of the humor, from Cassandra's stereotypical yuppie ex-boyfriend Tucker to the Richard Simmons-inspired aerobic class dance number. The musical keeps everything so ridiculously silly that it never bogs down the premise with over-serious drama. It keeps the spirit bright and the show fun and entertaining. I'm not saying that this is a stop-the-presses show and that you have to rush and go and see it. It's not that. This is the type of show you go to if you want pure entertainment. There's no deep message about the struggle of the working class. There's no real-life threatening drama anywhere. It's escapist entertainment, and your enjoyment of it will entirely depend upon whether or not you're a fan of Huey Lewis's 80s pop rock stylings, or if you have a tolerance for this kind of humor and storytelling. I expect that Gen Xers will really get a kick out of it, kind of how I was like the only person in the world who really enjoyed the musical getting the band back together, as it had a very niche audience. But I grew up in the 80s and 90s, so it targeted my specific age group, and so does this. So I'm going to inherently enjoy it more than people in the generation before me or after me. The cast is solid, with the one real standout performance going to Mackenzie Kurtz, who was charming as the pent-up business-first 80s woman who has forgotten how to let her hair down. Though a stereotype, she gives the role a lot more depth than one would expect with a show like this. Orville Mendoza is also pretty comical as Fjord, the owner of a Swedish furniture shop called Idea. Yeah, that's the kind of humor we're dealing with here. He is great and adds a lot of believability to the humor in the show. Most of Huey Lewis's big hits are in the show, like Hip to Be Square, If This Is It, I Want a New Drug, The Power of Love, which is actually in 2 Broadway shows right now with Back to the Future down the street, and of course The Heart of Rock and Roll. Some of the lyrics are changed in some of the songs to play to the plot, but it all comes off as service to the fans to hear the songs more than serving the story, which is what jukebox shows traditionally do. The Heart of Rock and Roll is a pretty much family-friendly show and is a silly escapist jukebox musical, kind of in the spirit of Escape to Margaritaville. It's not going to change your world, but if you're going out for a fun night, you'll probably be entertained, especially if you're a Gen Xer and a fan of Huey Lewis and the News. But I'm only one man's opinion, so be sure to leave yours in the comments below. If you'd like to see The Heart of Rock and Roll, I'll leave a link in the description where you can get tickets. Also in the description will be a link to my Patreon page, so please feel free to visit that as well. You can also support my channel by liking, sharing, and subscribing, and click the notification bell to be alerted to future reviews. My next review will be Yale Repertory Theater's production of The Far Country. Thank you for watching, and I will see you at the theater.